This is Small Professor, and I'm here with Cabbages in Space talking about Robin Hood. Check it out and let us know what you think.
Hello, Jeff.
Gary.
We are in space.
Yeah, we're in space.
We're back
are
in space.
Cabbages in Space.
We're back in space. Very excited to be back in space.
Kinda.
We were last here with Zilla Rocca talking about blue chips. And we've returned. Continue to keep it within the Wrecking Crew
You went and got
family.
a cheesesteak without me last night.
Are you really
In
just like harp
Philadelphia.
on that?
In Philadelphia,
really
you
gonna
went
harp
and
on
got
that?
a cheesesteak without me, and it hurts my feelings a little bit.
I'm
no
sorry.
plans were talked about as far as cheesesteaks were concerned.
It is not my fault that you went with a hippie to a second location.
We ain't got nothing to eat!
Okay. We got Small Professor on today. We're talking about Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I hope you guys enjoy it.
You start to scream, but terror takes the sound before you make it. Ready?
We're not talking about that today.
Thriller? We're not talking about
We're
Thriller?
not talking about
What are we
Thriller.
talking about
No,
today?
we are talking about Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Just a film that exists in the world in which we live.
It's a disaster film.
Ooh, disaster piece? Do we
It's
use
a
that?
disaster piece.
Do we use that word? We never used that word on the show before. Disaster piece. We had to bring in the right person to talk about this. We thought long and hard. We thought, who would be right to talk about a 1991 movie with one person of color in it? We thought really long and hard about it. And
Is he the only one?
we chose Small Professor.
Thank you for having
sorry.
me.
You're like, yeah, thank you.
Sorry, pal.
Small Professor. I was like,
Sorry, pal.
I was
don't know what to
like, wait a second. Yeah, he is, isn't he? Yeah.
it's one of those films.
I wonder if they pointed it out did they point it out at any point that he was the only black guy there? I wonder if anybody noticed in the cast.
Yeah. Like in the whole production.
They certainly don't point it out in the script.
We counted. By
We
the
did.
way, we did count.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. But let's do you a proper intro. Small Professor, Wrecking Crew, in-house producer, one half of both Career Crooks and Blue Edwards. You may know his production from Sean Price, Billy Woods, Elucid, also Arm & Hammer, Guilty Simpson, AJ Suede, and of course one of our dear friends from the show, Premrock. He's also got a ton of instrumental projects up on his Bandcamp. A bunch of them in the series I Had to Be a Blank in the past. The most recent being I Had to Be a Pharaoh in the future past. And the spelling of Pharaoh, I assume, is a nod to Pharaoh Monch.
It is indeed.
All right, as someone from New York, Organized Confusion, much respect for that choice.
That's right.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Man,
Cabbages in Space.
we're back in space,
We are in space.
a.k.a. Philadelphia.
Right.
We've returned to our lovely studio space. Shout out to ialive for putting us up again. Always lovely to be here with them. But we've been doing 90s movies, just to give you some context. We've been doing 90s movies this season. We've picked a lot of really weird little films. We've done like Nightbreed, Toy Soldiers. And then we started to expand a little bit and figure what could we do? Because the 90s has blockbusters, and there's so many to choose from.
We needed a blockbuster in there.
Because we were starting to get down this really esoteric route of things. You know, we did, I think probably the biggest film we did to date on this might be Dead Presidents.
Okay.
And it's not even the Hughes Brothers movie anybody wants to talk about.
It's true.
So, of course, we got Cadence Weapon from Canada to come and talk about that one. So, we've been trying to build out something. But I think today, we are really going to venture in. We've had a couple episodes where we've done some big films. But this is the biggest film possibly that we've done on the show.
This busted blocks.
This is the
Whole
second
blocks.
highest grossing film of 1991.
Really?
Yeah.
What was number one?
Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Okay, that makes sense.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And a much better film.
Yeah. So this was a huge film, made a lot of money, both domestically and internationally. So the way I want to start this is, what was your history with this film? Had you seen this movie as a kid or at any point in your life?
No. So first of all, I didn't realize there were so many Robin Hoods. When this movie was brought up, I was like, oh, okay. I know I've seen a Robin Hood. I wasn't sure which one. If the one I saw was the right one. It turns out it wasn't.
Okay.
I forget which one I actually saw. But so I watched this in the last couple days, and read a couple things about it. So yeah, very entertaining film. I was locked in.
Really?
Kevin Costner. I mean, this was '91, so this was like the era of the like macho like lead. But yeah, I was like, man, this. I can see how this was an iconic role at that time. Like he really like did perfectly for the time and the circumstance.
If I recall correctly, there hadn't been a major production of Robin Hood in a while at this point.
Okay.
It kind of became, stock. After this thing made money, there was sort of a run of Robin Hood movies over the years that were like,
okay,
let's try and recapture the magic. But
good old Hollywood.
This thing had a certain amount of, like everyone saw this movie.
Yeah.
It felt like when it came out.
I mean,
especially at the age that some of us were. I mean, like, you didn't not see this film. We owned the VHS in my house, and we watched it religiously. It was something that was always on.
We try to watch these movies, twice before our show. We often don't get to watch them together. We watch them separately, text each other during it. But what happened with this one is we actually got to watch this one together in the same room.
Word.
And it was great because I realized how that history of owning the VHS tape has burned these lines into his brain. He's just quoting things at the screen, like right as they're happening. So clearly, something. I
know this movie backwards and forwards, and I knew exactly when to be like, oh boy, here we go. This is gonna be ugly.
Well, the thing to frame is like in 1991, I did not see this until it came out on probably on VHS. I rented it almost certainly, but this was a film that was heavily marketed to us as like a family film. It was heavily marketed as like it was like a film. It had a PG-13 rating in the US, but it had a PG in the UK, which I later read that the head of the British Film Board, former head, who he'd been the head at the time, said that giving that movie a PG rating rather than something higher was the biggest regret of his time in that position.
He must have been an incredible, what was he called, a minister of film or whatever they call it?
Something of that. These are all...
That's an incredible career if your biggest problem was like, wow, that should have been PG-13.
Or their equivalent. I think they're 12 plus. It's 12 plus in the UK. Yeah. Something like that.
They cut off a hand
sounds low.
almost immediately.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
And it's not like they do it there's a cutaway or someone's face is like, oh, my hand. They are like, whoop, whoop, and throw the hand away. Like I remember being disturbed by a number of things in this. There's a witch that cuts her arm open for blood. Doesn't bleed a lot. I feel like there's not a lot of blood left.
She did that twice, didn't she?
Yeah. No, one other time she did it with an egg. You're like, oh, it's egg. I love eggs. And then it's just blood.
It's just blood egg. It's the worst breakfast ever.
Which, I don't know much about British cuisine, but I've never heard of a blood egg before.
It sounds like a drink.
It does.
It seems like this is a country
yes,
that like
bartender, I'll have a blood egg, please.
Yeah, with some eels on the side. Eel pie.
Yeah. And can you throw some dominoes with weird faces on them on top of that? That'd be great. Thank you.
I don't want to. I feel like we might be misrepresenting, British culture over the course of this conversation. I don't like to do that sort of thing on this show. I like to keep it authentic. I think this film also does some real wild stuff from the start, and that's where my thing is. I feel like if you were a 12-year-old kid, and that's how old I was when this came out, who goes to see this in the theaters, expecting, oh wow, we're gonna go see like a movie. This is gonna be a thing, and then suddenly you end up with, oh wait. The first thing after this grim title card about the Crusades is a Turkish prison, essentially, in Jerusalem. Of all places. And this horrible stuff happens, and this is where Morgan Freeman's character, Azim, meets Robin of Locksley, played by Kevin Costner. And that should have been clear at this point, people. We're talking about Kevin Costner,
Yeah.
well-known British thespian.
Kevin
Costner.
Costner.
And Morgan Freeman. So playing bizarre pair of characters, certainly from the start. An odd couple, you might say.
Yeah.
And once you get past this bit of horrific violence in the Turkish prison in Jerusalem, then it turns into a buddy comedy for like 15 minutes. It's the Morgan Freeman, Kevin Costner buddy comedy you never knew you needed in your life. It's such a strange way of doing it. And you're looking at the one I really want to point out is that why that means so much is that those two actors were in rare form at that period in their careers.
They were. Yeah.
Yes.
So like you got to think about like Kevin Costner's run up until that point is like The Untouchables, Bull Durham,
Classic.
Dances with Wolves.
Awful.
Like these are the things he's doing.
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman, off of his role in Street Smart.
Okay.
Have you ever seen Street Smart?
No.
We did an episode with Billy Woods and Blockhead on it.
Okay.
And it's basically this movie.
It's
with him.
essentially his arrival into Hollywood, and he goes off in his role.
What year was that?
That's probably 86,
Okay.
87. He plays this like extremely violent pimp. And Christopher Reeve plays a journalist who's kind of trying to exploit his story, essentially.
Morgan Freeman?
Morgan Freeman.
He's nominated for an Oscar, right?
Gets nominated
was-
for...
I
One
gotta
of the
see
only
this.
times Cabbages has ever watched a movie where an actor was not Oscar
for
nominated.
best supporting. He gets heat, so he gets heat off of that, and then like his like run of what was it? So his run of movies all at 89. Glory,
Killer.
Driving Miss Daisy, and
Few
Lean
problems
on
with
Me.
that one.
That
In
was
1
all
year.
the same year?
1 year.
And
Yo,
Lean
that's
on Me
crazy.
is
So-
a stunning classic.
So at this point, he can write his own ticket,
Yeah.
and Costner can write his own ticket. They chose this.
This is what they did.
This is what they chose to do. Where I think the film starts, I start to suspend my disbelief, or I have trouble suspending my disbelief, I should say, is when it says that from Jerusalem to whatever part of England they get to,
in a rowboat.
it takes them 4 months.
4 months to get there in a rowboat. They do, to their credit, they have 4 people rowing the boat. So it's not just 2 people rowing the boat. And that cuts the time in half.
But there's also a lot of people.
Anyone who's ever boated will tell you having 4 people instead of 2 cuts the time directly in half.
There's a lot of people on that boat.
Damn.
It's a bizarre thing. It's a series of bizarre choices.
Where did they find these people?
Well, they don't tell you what happens in the
They
4 months.
immediately abandon these people too. They're like, okay, here's the plan. We're gonna high time it. I got 4 months before I want to be on my own soil, and then when we get there, you gotta try to kill my friend who you've been riding with
Not
for 4 months.
kill him, but to...
Kidnap him and take him back to his
Gently
homeland or
persuade
something.
him to come back with us.
I believe
Right.
the term we're not allowed to use for that is Shanghai.
We're not allowed to.
We're not allowed to use that word.
Yeah.
We can't use that word anymore. But that's essentially what they try to do. What
We've watched a lot of movies with bad plans lately, and that to me was a pretty bad plan.
Yeah.
There were a couple bad plans in this movie. I think that's a good overarching theme. I liked like that intro part where they were in the prison. I like that they just threw you into the action. There was no explanation.
Predator style.
You're like, how did they get here? Who are these people?
We don't have names.
And just, you're just forced to like dial in. Like you have to pay attention because I was very confused for up until that part. I was like, oh, okay. We're just here now. Great. I mean, part of making music, I've recently been really enjoying is the fact that I can just make up whatever I want. Mm-hmm. My album, the album I put out yesterday, I was considering putting it out next week and just saying it came out on the 13th just because I like the date.
Mm-hmm.
Who would know?
Right.
No.
It's our own, it's our own creation. So I appreciate their desire to just, kind of throw logic and what
Caution
makes
in the
sense.
wind.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's just
absolutely.
just go along with it. Just don't think too much about it. I can appreciate that.
I mean, it definitely is I guess I would use the word imaginative retelling of the Robin Hood story.
Yeah.
You know, while we said there weren't it hadn't been any kind of big, you know, motion picture versions of it in a minute before this came out, the Brits love this story. There's been TV shows, miniseries. They love the Robin Hood tale.
Mm-hmm.
They've done that so many times. Some of the people who were in this movie had been other characters in previous iterations of it. It's like that kind of like thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for I think Americans, the version we mostly know is the Walt Disney version.
The Disney version,
where Robin Hood is a fox.
Oh yeah.
And
Okay.
Little John is a bear.
Yeah.
And it's all woodland critters as the characters with the famous.
Which Robin Hood was the like more comedic take on it?
You're thinking of the parody.
Yeah.
Mel Brooks's Robin Hood.
That's the one I
Heights.
saw.
Heights.
Yeah.
Carrie Elwes.
That's the one I saw
Chappelle.
as a Ute.
There's just like it's a wonderful
Chappelle,
cast
yeah, okay.
of comic actors.
Yeah.
And is a stone cold satire of this idiot movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's brilliant. And there are times, because I watched both of those movies around the same time a lot, sometimes back to back, there were times I was getting confused about like what actually happens in scenes. Because they're so...
They bleed in.
Yeah,
They bleed in.
So this one though is like Robin Hood Prime. This is the like definitive.
I think for a lot of people it is. Like, because they've done since they did one with Russell Crowe.
Okay, that
And
was
they did
2018.
And they did a Taron Egerton one with
Yeah.
Jamie Foxx. Like, as sort of again, playing to the whole buddy comedy idea again. Like, leaning into that.
I've seen that one too.
So,
I
like,
think.
they've done versions,
Yeah.
but this is kind of the one. It definitely was the one that was most financially successful.
Yeah.
And so I think
Oh.
that's how I feel. But it's like, this is not the story. Like, there's like Robin of Locksley going off to fight in the Crusades is
Yeah.
not the story. So they kind of reposition him as this sort of rich man who becomes radicalized by what he sees over there to become a better person, ostensibly.
Yeah.
At least that's how they presented it. That's the
Well,
script that they
that's
sold.
how war always works. Every single time someone goes to war, they come back and they do
Yeah.
nothing but good for society. War begets peace. That's how it works.
In the movies.
Sure, exactly. Robin Hood here. The
Real life?
portrayal-
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Portrayal? No. The portrayal of Robin Hood in this movie, in this context, by Costner, has kind of some contemporary parallels. Obviously, Luigi Mangione, for example.
Oh, I thought of that.
He gets radicalized
Oh,
in such a way and goes against someone who is in position who's exploiting the people. So, there's a folk hero kind of aspect to this. Not to get political here. Not trying to get political here. But Robin Hood is basically our Luigi Mangione, and Luigi Mangione is our Robin Hood.
Yeah.
That's right.
Really some food for thought here on the Cabbages podcast.
The first time that's ever happened. Normally, in a food for thought situation, I could say something like, "We ain't got nothing to eat."
Look, England needs own Luigi Mangione.
I could do it, but I wouldn't. I would never. Personally, I would never yell that line.
Do you know they made action figures for this movie? Like toys? They're actual toys for this movie?
I can believe it.
Yeah. I saw the...
and a set. Like, you remember back in the day, they'd make like a set.
You buy the
For
set.
you, you
So
buy
you
the
play
play
set.
set.
Are we talking like He-Man?
Talking like
Yeah,
Star Wars
like
action
there's
figures. Think about
there's
Star
a-
Wars action figures?
Yeah.
The same company, Kenner. Made
Okay.
action figures for this.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely didn't know this movie was such a big deal.
It was massive.
Yeah.
And
Action
I don't
figures.
remember, I didn't look it up this time, but a lot of times in this era, if they find out it's going to be a big blockbuster, somebody has toys at a fast food restaurant. I don't know if it was, I remember that happening, but I was young, so it might not have happened. I don't know. We'd have to look that
Or
up.
Mandela Effect.
There's a couple of Mandela effects associated with this movie, too.
Yes.
There's the music video for... I was holding off on this song, but because I could talk about this song for 30 minutes straight. Brian Adams.
No, it's true. Everything I do.
That's pretty good.
Thank you. There's a little Joe Cocker in there. Just like the tiniest bit for Brian Adams has a little bit of Joe Cocker in there.
Canadian rock star Brian Adams.
Multiple time Juno winner, I'm sure.
He's
I didn't look it up, but I'm sure.
He's a gem. He's a gem of the nation. The thing was,
Oh,
I remembered
do it for you.
there was a music video for it,
Yes.
which incorporated scenes from the film. As things sometimes have music videos, like when they splice in
Oh,
scenes
yeah,
from the film
okay.
all the time. Like, so you see
Yeah.
those things, you go, okay, yeah, sure, okay, it's
I
promoting
remember
it to.
distinctly when he's singing "There's no love." You know what I mean? Like they're doing the bridge. There's the scene where Marion turns when Robin Hood says something
Yeah.
provocative, and she turns.
Boy, oh boy, them
But Gary,
But you can't find this video
Doesn't
on the internet.
exist.
Doesn't exist on the internet. And there have been YouTube videos that have come out of people trying to be like, is this a Mandela effect situation?
two.
And I did my digging, my research, and it turns out that it does exist.
it does.
It was on the VHS
Oh, okay.
copy, some of the original first VHS copies of the movie when it came out on for home video, and it has not been transferred over in any way. But there was a music video that I'm assuming was shown in Canada that is just Bryan Adams doing the song. No
Right,
scenes from the movie.
he's walking
Oh, okay.
around in a bog-like set. Right? Isn't that what's happening?
I think
That's
it's a
the
little
way I
more.
remember
I think it's
it.
a little more generic than that, to be honest.
Oh,
I think it's even more generic than that. But the idea is like it's to the point where like when I started watching this film, I had trouble remembering if I had seen this movie or if I just seen that music video a bunch of times.
Wow.
It was like that. So Mandela Effect absolutely plays a role there. But to get back to the toys are like, do you remember like the Star Wars toys?
Yeah.
So it's the same style. And I went and I started looking up, you could buy right now on eBay, there's one of Morgan Freeman's Azim.
I was about to say, there's an Azim.
There's an Azim,
Wow.
and they even have his kind of signature dermatosis
Yeah.
in the toy.
Wow.
The toy has
You
that.
know what I was wondering? Where at the end when there's the wedding, where did he get his outfit?
Excellent question. I don't have an answer.
I was like, you look amazing, but did Amazon like drop it off quickly?
I mean, there's a number of incredible questions. They took a 4-month journey. Everyone's perfectly clean shaven when they arrive in England.
On a boat.
I thought
On a
about that
boat
too.
for
I was like,
4
man,
months,
nobody's
a rowboat.
Yeah.
For 4 months, sailing all the way around Spain and been back up toward the island.
Sure.
Shaved. Everybody's clean.
Clean as a whistle.
Clean.
Even when Costner goes and takes the wet sand into his face, arriving on the shores of
Sucking
England,
sand.
sucking sand, he comes out of that with a clean face.
Clean.
Like, there must be something in his contract that said he couldn't actually appear dirty at any point in the film. Except for one scene where he smears feces
Steaming
onto his body.
hot. Brand new feces. He just found some brand new feces and put it on.
when they are coming to infiltrate the wedding. He has to sneak his way
Oh
in.
yeah. Okay.
He
And
Wow.
he picks up from the ground
Yeah.
steaming hot pile of dung, fresh, to rub on himself to get into the thing.
Just a beautiful scene.
It's a choice.
Also, an above average archer. Very good archer, like more than you would assume for. I mean, I guess if you're of nobility in that time, you have a lot of time to practice.
The thing with this movie is that all you need is a montage, and everyone is a warrior.
Yeah.
You get, and it's a long montage. I'll give them credit. It's a
Yeah.
long montage, but like they truly only needed like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
For all of them to be incredible archers and swordsmen, and they were stronger and faster, and they could build a whole town.
The tree forest.
They did
village,
all of this
suspended in the air. They had
bright
pulley
enough
systems.
to like devise a series of traps. Smart enough to devise a way to like disguise themselves in the forest. Smart enough to build an incredible a stockpile of weapons so incredible that they could waste weapons just playing around. But they could not put together that if you build things out of wood, fire burns it down. Not one of them was like, hey, real quick, do we have something to stop someone from just setting us on fire? And they were like, oh, shit. Like when the archers roll up and they pull up the fire arrows, every face in that thing is like, oh, Fuck, I knew there was something I was forgetting about us building an entire town out of pine straw.
A contingency they didn't plan for.
Yeah.
And that is fire. Also, we're in Great Britain. Nobody gets rained on.
Oh, wow.
There's a couple of storms here and there, but everyone's safe inside. It's fine. No big deal. But the people in the woods, they're in the only part of England that doesn't get rain.
Somehow.
Making it dry enough for the fire to be extra deadly. It's an extra deadly set of fire.
This is a mystical England.
It is.
I also like that the mystical part, again, like it's only alluded to with the witch and her. Like it's not like any main part of the movie. It's just like every couple scenes he goes downstairs and gets his future.
What was her name? Mortiana?
Mortiana, yeah.
He comes down and he's like, Mortiana, things are going bad. Can you tell me what's going on? She's like, things are going bad.
Yeah.
He's like, damn it.
Yeah.
I knew it. I knew it was bad.
Professor Snape and Professor McGonagall.
I really don't understand what her purpose in the film is, or why that is an element. Because this is actually like a story that, even though again there's some issues about logistics. In fairness, we are largely looking at a film that makes sense. This is how a rebellion would occur at the time. This is the kind of castle intrigue stuff that would have happened if you read about, merry old England. But like this weird angle about they're all going after Robin Hood's father and others, and having them basically be killed for being devil worshippers.
Yeah, they're attacking nobility
yeah.
so that the people who are still King Richard people, they're going after them and accusing them of high crimes.
And I understand that up to a point, because obviously here in the U.S. we have the Salem witch trials. Sure. We have plenty of instances where people have been identified.
We learned from the best.
Yeah, it comes from somewhere. But then there's an actual witch performing actual witchcraft, and there are things that she does that don't make sense. The amount of dry ice that must have been used in the scene where she first shows up.
Oh, Does she live in a bog? Inside the castle, they built a bog. It's a little weird. Why do you need a bog inside a castle? There's like frogs jumping around and shit. What's going on? Cage your frogs, lady. If you're going to be a good witch, we need some organization.
Admittedly, the sound of the frog did take me out because it was clearly Foleyed.
It really was.
It's like, oh, there's the sound of a frog. Ribbit. Like that classic thing. It's like whenever you hear that like kind of Wilhelm scream, you hear that sort of like, oh, in a movie.
And he's like,
come on.
He's like walking across a tightrope situation to get to her. I'm like, you're in a room in your own castle, pimp. Like, what is happening right now? We really need you to yell at your witch mother.
Yeah.
And get her room in her house in order. This is disgusting. How do you allow this person to live like this?
I'm just saying is that we have a world where people of nobility are being killed.
Slain. Because
of their purported ties to devil worship. But there's an actual witch in this world. And who isn't afraid to come out in public.
Yeah.
She shows up in different times and like actually outside, especially towards the wedding stuff.
And people make reference, they're like, well,
the witch, they know she exists.
They know that there's a witch that like advises the sheriff.
They say was raised by a witch.
Right.
Like, I mean, they also, I mean, this is the place that still like believes that
does
like
the witch get consultant fees?
Ghosts.
Do we think?
I mean,
that the reason he doesn't just go in every day and go tell me what to do to be powerful is that each time he has to pay like an amount of money to this person.
It's the power.
He is kind of a cheapskate, except for when he's trying to like bribe people to kill.
Oh man, people. He was the worst with that. I guess he did keep getting his money stolen, but
yeah, I think at some point someone who is actually frugal is like, yo, my money's getting stolen from this one point over and over again.
Maybe I should.
I'm just gonna stop trying to do that.
Yeah.
That's not a good way to do.
Were there really no other routes to London? Given how much, because they say it's in the millions have been stolen from him over the course of indeterminate period of time before they decide to go in there with fire.
I think they said it was over the period of a few months.
So 3 to 4 million, I remember at one point is what the scribe says at one point. Like, don't you consider a different route, if you've been stolen that many times,
Right.
you know it's going to happen. You're going to go in. You're going to send somebody in there. They're going to get the money. Like, if you get robbed on the same corner, every time you go to that corner, you find another way to get where you're going, right?
You would think.
You would. But I don't get the sense that the Sheriff of Nottingham played brilliantly by Alan Rickman. Truly the standout performance of the film.
Shout out to his hair.
His hair, his facial hair.
Yeah, well, his majestic crown.
Very much so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of majestic hair in this.
Yeah.
For people who live in the woods and are, seemingly would be kind of disgusting.
Yeah.
They look great.
Christian Slater looks absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Little John is crushing it. I mean, he's out there looking great.
Flowing
and
locks.
you're like, but his wife is like filthy and disgusting. Like she's constantly covered in dirt in like every scene, and like her hair is shabby and wild, but all of the dudes look fucking immaculate.
Well, Christian Slater to me in this movie, I wasn't feeling his character. I was like, the Christian Slater, he would have been like the Costner in the movies. Like I've seen, he's been like the dude.
Yeah.
So to see him like be the, like the traitor, he got, by the end he had no friends.
No, the Judas of the movie.
Yeah, man, he was.
I just don't. You could have cut him out and gotten rid of the brother stuff at the end.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert: they're brothers for no reason.
Yeah.
There's no benefit to that.
There's
I
no
thought that
benefit
was a
to it
lie,
whatsoever.
actually.
Yeah.
I thought that was like part of his.
Say he was just
his
lying
ruse,
to like.
yeah. Because he
get
did say
closer
like,
to him.
"Oh, I can get him," But I didn't think they were actually brothers,
It only makes sense to have that for one reason and one reason only. Is that when he is recaptured.
Yeah.
What an idiot. Recaptured, and then he is basically he's bound to a makeshift chopping block that just so happens to be full of the black
Dynamite.
powder,
Yeah.
gunpowder, dynamite. That tied to that. That's say now there's a change of heart about, well, how do we handle this situation? How do we had a plan to blow it up from afar, and now what do we do?
Yeah.
It's
Now, at that point, they understood explosions and fire.
But what I don't understand that it's like they have no experience with the black powder. That comes from Azim. Again, how Azim managed to at some point over the course of that 4-month journey get all this black powder through and never use it at any point up until that stage. Which I mean I don't know how many pockets Azim had, but he definitely had some. And
he had a bag in the beginning.
So maybe in his rucksack was the recipe.
Yeah.
It seems like you would have figured out how to use that
Sooner.
battle before. Yeah.
Sooner.
Yeah.
And as a weapon against the people who were going to the hordes that were coming. But
like if I was coming into a final battle after I lost, I don't know, it looked like hundreds of townspeople were burned up in these trees or shot with arrows. And then after the battle, my main man comes up and he's like, "Yo, man, you know what? I was thinking we should use this potion thing that makes wild explosions." I'd be like, "You let 100 people die. Women and children were burned alive. And all of a sudden, you have a magic powder that blows up? And you're going to bring it to me now?
there have been entire...
We lost. We are done, dog. This is it."
Gotta fight fire with fire.
There have been entire movies about the basis of securing gunpowder. Like, there's that film, what was called The Great Wall. Matt Damon. It was a Chinese movie. Matt Damon
Doesn't sound like
tries to steal...
Matt Damon in that Chinese movie.
It was one of those Chinese co-productions, because Hollywood needs that audience to make any film profitable.
Correct.
So Chinese co-production where Matt Damon plays someone who tries to steal what we now know as gunpowder from this fortified Chinese place on the other side of the wall, only to discover that it is actually there to protect them against dragons, dinosaurs. It's a really underrated, absurd movie.
Man.
Sounds like it might have been rated perfectly well.
But I do want to point out, what I'm really with the gunpowder that so fascinates me is that, so Christian Slater being his brother, now he can't kill his brother. I have a brother. He can't kill his brother. But Are you telling me
Yeah,
that
whole speech is like, you were a piece of shit. You treated our family. You broke my family apart. I had to live in the woods for 1,000,000 years. And Kevin Costner's like, I have a brother?
You can talk?
It's like that.
Well, guys, look, he can talk. Christian Slater can talk. And he's somewhat attempting at times an English accent. This is incredible.
But I just want to understand the thought process. Again, I recognize they're not smart. He doesn't know how to use the telescope that Azim.
Oh my gosh!
That
the
is
telescope. He's
what
like,
he pulls a sword out and points it at advancing troops from
oh my gosh,
like a mile away. It's incredible.
So I recognize that the West hasn't caught up to the technological innovations of the East. I do understand that. That being said, did they think that if they shot their arrow into the black powder, that it wasn't going to grievously harm or kill the people who were being hung on the stage, who they were ostensibly meant to be saving?
Right. I think they put the gunpowder a little too close to the problem.
They moved it right over there. Like Christian Slater, there's no more places to hang me. And it's like, no, we'll just put this thing right next to where everyone's being hanged and just have it right there.
We could I think we just need to move into the general idea that was a shitty plan.
That's a shitty plan.
The first thing that happens is a woman just sits with a bag of weapons and just kind of tosses them intermittently at people who are walking around.
Very easy to get the weapons in.
Very easy, and also very easy to see giant hunks of steel being dropped in front of people from a wall. Like, there's got to be better security than this. Now, I'm willing to suspend my disbelief on that.
Are you?
Why not?
Okay.
But if we're going to suspend our disbelief on the effect of dropping a child with a rope tied around his neck, and he's just like, ow, 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 my neck! Ow, it's harder to breathe this way. I can't do it. I can't live in a world where, like, I hate this in movies when people get hung, and the problem is, ow, it's burning my neck, it hurts, it's hard to breathe. They're dead. That kid's dead immediately upon the drop of that chair.
What I thought in regards to that was the first arrow strike helped the pressure to just delay his actual
asphyxiation. Is that a scientific fact that if you slightly sever a rope,
I think so, and start spinning?
Yeah.
I think, could happen.
That is a kindness that you are affording this movie.
That is really nice.
Lots of,
we appreciate it.
Yeah.
So the plan is bad.
The plan is bad. And the way that they plan it, he basically just takes some things, he builds a circle of wood, and he just kind of stabs places where people will stand. And then this, Little John's wife rolls up and is like, I'm coming too. And he's like, no, you're not. And she's like, yes, I am. And he's like, it's good enough for me. And puts her in the plan. Meanwhile, in the past 15 to 20 minutes of movie, they've had to save her life twice. Two times. She had a tough childbirth situation that they had to save her life, which she's fully recovered from a day or two later. And then on top of that, she was caught on a burning bridge in the middle of a battle, just carrying a baby through a battle. And they're like, and Robin Hood's like, listen, she's part of the plan. Not only is she part of the plan, she will be the one that distributes weapons to the rest of us. She's the linchpin of the plan. She rolls up late and is like, I want to be in the plan. They're like, you can have the most important role of all. Distributing weapons to us so that we don't die.
Damn. She was
What
important.
is going on with this plan?
Just ride or die. With die being a big possibility.
Oh boy, that's a huge possibility. The fact that none of them die is incredible.
I thought there would be more deaths on the good side of the people. At least Christian Slater. I thought he was gonna like, accidentally,
right.
I thought that was what was gonna happen with the dynamite. Yeah. Honestly, like he was gonna be like I didn't mean to, but your head was next to the dynamite. So
I feel like it was a point where if he had died, I don't think anybody watching it would have been like, oh no, poor Christian Slater.
Not Christian Slater.
No, it's like
not Will Scarlet.
We've seen him die in better movies.
I thought Azim was gonna die.
It seemed
How
like
is
there were
he
a lot
still
of good
standing?
opportunities, but if
He
he
got-
died,
No.
then we wouldn't get that incredible speech where he turns England against Sheridan,
Which
where he stands on a wall and goes, "That guy is awesome," and everyone's like, "Freedom! Let's do it!"
admittedly, though, like the propaganda campaign leading up to that point is very real.
It is
People
pretty good, yeah.
love Robin Hood.
They do.
But given the way this movie treats Azim, treats Morgan Freeman's character, I have a hard time believing they would be receptive to that from him.
Fair enough.
Jeff, how many times did you log that people pointed out, this movie pointed out, that Morgan Freeman looked different from other people in the movie?
Essentially, I think it was a baker's dozen, but essentially
13.
13 different times in
Really?
the movie. And I think he makes around 15 to 16 appearances. It was almost every time he walked on the screen, they were like, black, he's black, he's black. Yo,
It's
dude, you're going to let him deliver a baby? He's black.
Meh.
It was every single time, to the point where a small child just wanders up to him out of nowhere. And he smiles and is like, "Hey, little buddy." And she's like, "Why did God paint you?
I thought that was such a like.
Why is that included in this
Yeah.
film? Why
I thought
did
that
God
was-
paint you?"
Such a like tender moment in this movie. And then was that supposed to be her dad? The guy from
It's possible. They don't really get into the townspeople.
Oh.
It starts to blur for me kind of
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
people are connected to each other. The second viewing helped a little bit of it,
Okay.
but not a lot. But that scene is, I think, meant to be touching.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that's their intent.
Yeah.
Because you see when she walks up to Morgan Freeman, who has had to not necessarily suffer in silence per se, because
Yeah.
he does speak for himself, but like has had to deal with some of this with everybody since he's linked up with Kevin Costner, and suddenly a small child approaches, and you can see the smile on his face.
There's
Yeah.
beautiful
Finally,
innocence.
a
and,
moment.
There's a ray of sunshine coming for us.
Yeah.
Human kindness for a fucking change.
She just rolls up and is like, "He's black."
like
I want to ask a question.
you do.
I do want to ask a question about this scene. How old is too old to ask that question? It seemed like she was like, what, 5, 6?
Yeah.
I said about 6. Yeah.
Yeah, probably 6 years old.
Yeah.
I think by 7, you can't ask that question anymore. I think she's like, right. If she had had a birthday that day, he would have beheaded her. On site. Like, sorry, that's on site. You don't get to ask me why God.
It would have been better if she was just like, "It's my birthday."
Yeah.
That would have been a more
It's
touching
my
line.
birthday. And he would have been like, "Ah, beautiful child," and we would have had a great time. Nope.
I don't.
Essentially,
His answer was not
Azim
good either.
is like the HR of this organization. He's taking all the hardest questions. He's teaching how to sword fight. He's doing all these incredible things for the company, and his reward is for every single time he tries to help, which he's done nothing but help the
Nothing
entire
but
movie.
help. He
Somebody
advanced them.
jumps in and is like, "Just want to." He's a Moor, y'all.
Do
Like,
you know this?
real talk. He's not from England. That's black guy. Every time.
I'm glad that we've gotten past as like a film trope to say just because it's a period piece, we have to cast it in this absurd way. Like
Yeah.
finally, like we're watching entertainment. Like it doesn't matter. Put good actors in things, and
That's
you
all.
will see a good movie. I'm glad that Hollywood has largely
Yeah.
been able to be like, you know what, we can make these films, and it's okay if there's an Asian person here. It's okay if there's a
It's all good.
we can have a Puerto Rican Robin Hood if we wanted to. We could do it. Why not? I'm sure fucking Hamilton guys would be all over it. Lin-Manuel would be 100% down.
That
to
does
make
seem like
Puerto
the
Rican Robin Hood.
for
Actually,
the
yeah.
Puerto
This
Ricans,
this you might have just given somebody a great idea.
Look, I'd rather see that. I'm
Yeah.
tired of seeing the same white dudes. My favorite version of Robin Hood is the Fox, the animated Fox thing from
same.
Disney. 100%.
I will say that it is nice to see Kevin Costner in a white savior movie where the people are being saved are white.
Yeah.
He's not
facts.
saving indigenous folks
Yeah. This was like
by
a.
being like,
This was
"I'm
like a
taller
class
on my
struggle
horse than
movie.
you are." I don't understand that film at all, but we won't go into Dances with Wolves.
we don't need to.
We won't go into Dances with Wolves
necessary.
today. We're here to talk about another movie where he does the exact same thing and acts as himself. Kevin Costner starring as himself.
He was
Robin Hood.
himself in
Yeah.
this movie. Yeah.
He's always himself.
There's no accent. He doesn't do an accent.
None. Everybody else, like the director had to come in day one and be like, cut. Hey, listen, even Christian Slater's giving it a shot.
But only when he sings.
Do you mind if you just give it a shot one time?
I did like Azim's accent.
Azim's felt at least like closer to what you might expect.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that was wrong. But like, nobody's doing accent, really. Hardly anyone's doing any real accent.
Little John's got the best one.
Yeah.
Bugger me.
Well, the actual Brits are able to do it, like Rickman and those folks. Like they can do it. So some of these people are like, fresh in the drink, governor. Like that sort of like.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that sort of like shit that goes on. Like these
Straight from the streets of Sussex, they are.
because these are the people who would have done like the TV show version of this anyway.
Yeah.
Like, these kind of people would be in it.
Friar Tuck also has a wonderful like. First of all, why did they introduce Friar Tuck like an hour and a half into this film? We needed him. He was the savior we needed the whole time. Him and Rickman saved this film from
just
utter
this
obscurity.
Big drunk man being pulled on a wagon.
Yeah.
Shows up like an hour plus into the film.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember what I knew him from. Was he in one of the Batman movies?
He might have been.
Was he the guy that Joker put the bomb inside? I think that was him.
Good question.
Maybe.
We might have
He's
to
in
pause
Office
for a moment
Space.
to check it. He is in Office Space. He's the
I just realized this.
Yes.
He's the
shrink.
the psychologist who puts him under hypnosis and causes him to no longer care about his job.
Oh yeah, he sure is.
So
He's
he's
that
a
guy.
character actor you've seen in a lot of things. Is kind of the short of that is. And he does an amazing job. Like the thing is that this film in its back half and really when he starts decides finally to embrace comic relief. We are showing you we're showing you action, swashbuckling, we're showing you various atrocities, on the poor, and otherwise we're doing a lot of casual racism. And then it's like, now let's get the funny drunk fat guy up here and let's make people laugh.
And we get two idiots.
Frickin' frack.
Yeah, we get frickin' frack that come in and are like, and then
with the
then we
maid.
get a
Do you
fight
remember the
scene.
Maid Marian scene where she goes into the woods with her other woman, and there's the two.
They're trying to like
the bumbling
stop her.
guys who are trying to stop her.
Then we see
That's what we
Costner's
were calling
booty.
him.
We call them frickin' frack because we never see them. We almost never see them before. They show up there an hour and a half into this 2.5 hour movie. To try to be funny.
Bull earlier because he talks about his penis.
We do because he's talking about the length of his around the campfire, right?
Save it for the ladies.
And he does say save it for ladies, and that is the least British thing that Kevin Costner says the entire movie.
That's not true.
Is save it for ladies.
That's
No,
not
what does he
true.
say?
That's not true.
No,
because after the guy comes out and he goes, "We ain't got nothing to eat," and he goes, "I can't do it. It's so funny." But he looks at this person who's just given like the most British scream of all time, and he goes, "What can we eat that the forest cannot provide?" And just puts his hands in the air. This is the acting we got. That's the least British thing. We ain't got nothing to eat. What can we eat that the forest cannot provide? It's like he was doing VO work for a fucking commercial.
but Costner never really tries to do a British accent. And you mentioned like you posited like, oh, what if the director came to him once? The director did, because the director was his friend.
Yeah.
Kevin Reynolds. You got to wonder what the fuck this guy was doing.
There's too many Kevins involved at that point. More than one Kevin, and you got to cut back. I'm sorry. Sorry, Kevin.
Cut off is one?
It's one.
Two Kevins in such prominent positions feels like too much.
Okay.
It does.
Kevin
Fair.
R, Kevin C. We're starting to get a little. But
lot.
Kevin Reynolds, the director, had like hardly any directing credits up until that point.
Oh.
He had directed Costner in like a 1985 movie called Fandango that nobody saw.
Wow.
And he'd done another smaller film nobody saw. And then he gets this basically off of the like Costner. I think, from what I've read, that Costner was reluctant to do this movie. And remember, he has serious pull at this point. He can do whatever. He's going to get millions of dollars to be in this film. And he's like, I don't really want to do it. But then once they were able to get his friend to be the director, all right, now I'll go and I'll do this movie.
Damn.
And that's one of the wild things about
Why you
this.
can't trust more than one Kevin at a time. They're
But-
always stunting for other Kevins. They're not doing what's best for the movie.
Now, Reynolds did work on Dances with Wolves, uncredited as a second unit director.
Mm-hmm.
There's a buffalo hunting scene that he is, again, uncredited, but he is uncredited but credited for helping Costner through, which is sort of how you get this.
Is that where you get, like, in the credits, you'll see an assistant to Mr. Costner? Perhaps that was it?
Maybe something like that, but it didn't get credit for what he actually did on that film.
Okay.
So this was, I guess, sort of a reward for that, the work that he did on that movie. But then again, he also was the original writer, Kevin Reynolds, of Red Dawn.
Okay.
So like he had some stuff. He didn't write this movie.
Yeah.
This movie was written by like two like British guys who were producers who came up with the idea of like making a Robin Hood radicalized by the Crusades, and they sold their script for like they're producers of the film, and they sold it for like.
Were they from Sussex?
Yeah, some of them maybe, but they had only as a writing duo they had only really had one other movie to their credit. Do you remember the name of that movie, Jeff?
I don't.
It's,
you know that I don't.
You don't remember the name of that movie? Oh. It was a movie called...
You didn't really give us names. You were just like two British guys. Well, there are two British guys who wrote a bunch of movies.
Penn Desham and Mike Watson.
I still don't know what the movie is.
The movie's called A Gnome Named Norm.
Oh.
Wow, that's a great title.
And there's a G in front of the Norm as well. So Gnome Named Norm, which is a... Anthony Michael Hall is the star of that movie.
I've seen so many Anthony Michael Hall vehicles, and somehow this one escaped me.
Anthony Michael Hall teams up with a gnome.
Did they put a silent G in front of Hall?
No, but they should.
Anthony Michael Gahal.
Gahal?
Gahal. One of the owls of Gahul, perhaps. So the point is, like, we've got a director who really, this is too big for him. And we've got a writing team who are basically just
So you
producers.
don't think he ever went to Costner and said, can we at least give it a shot?
No, I think that's just like,
I'm with
we
you on
have
that.
Kevin Costner to star in this movie.
No.
Done.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of casting things. Costner was not the only person who looked at this. A lot of the roles, there's different people. Who
Almost
were given
every
credits.
role was passed
For
on
sure.
by other actors.
Like, the most famous one.
Yeah.
So, you saw Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's one. And do you see that when you were younger? Or?
Yeah, I was probably in high school,
Yeah.
I'd say.
So, that one, the guy who plays Robin Hood in that movie, Cary Elwes, was originally being considered for the role in this one.
As Robin Hood.
As Robin Hood.
Oh,
And
okay.
he didn't like the script.
Better movie, bar none, right off the bat, if Cary Elwes does it. And if they had gotten him to do Men in Tights right after that, the best double play of all time.
Wow. What
Cary
could it have
Elwes,
been?
like, because he had done Princess Bride, had been kind of thing that like a lot of people knew Cary Elwes for, and so, which
Perfect.
I rewatched recently and is still a ton of fun. Andre the Giant and the fucking
One of the
movie,
greatest
like,
movies
it's
of all time.
So good, but like, so that was so like they already were thinking a very different person who would have absolutely done accent. He would have actually have done the voices.
He says it in the other movie. He says, you know, what makes you such a good Robin Hood? And he goes, I speak with a British accent.
Yes, that was the
And it's
difference.
Maybe the scene that really sold me on the film was like, when he said that, I was like, Mel, you really outdid yourself on this one. You really did.
It's Mel Brooks' last good movie.
I'm with that.
I mean, you're not gonna stand for Dracula Dead and Loving It, are you?
I can't. I want to because I love Leslie so much. Leslie Nielsen is a hero of mine, but you know, a piece
Leslie
of shit's a piece
Nielsen
of
is
shit.
amazing.
That movie is trash.
And there is a cutoff line with Leslie on whether or not I'll say it's like an actually good film. Repossessed is better than that film. Let's put it that
Repossessed is better, yeah, for sure. Yeah, Linda Blair actually. They get the Cary Elwes thing. If he had done both movies,
Right.
would have been like if he had done the Robin
Right,
Hood
that's
movie,
the Linda Blair.
and then
We should
Linda
call
Blair
that
does
the
The
Linda
Exorcist,
Blair.
and then does years
does
later
Repossessed.
The Exorcist parody Repossessed is like mind blowing.
It's genius.
Fucking mind blowing.
It should happen more.
It is a reward. Well, it's like Sean Connery showing up in this movie. Like Sean Connery had
At the
played,
end.
he had played Robin Hood in
Oh,
some
okay.
thing before.
I thought there was supposed to be like some illusion there.
Yeah.
Because I was like, why would... Because he showed up like a special invited guest.
Yeah, he's
Like,
his cameo, right?
Yeah, the dad on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air showing up at the end of the Family Matters episode.
Exactly, which is
Same
that's a great
vibes.
one.
Yeah.
That's been showing. They've been feeding that one to me on Instagram quite a bit lately.
Yeah, I get that too.
A few of these things that they serve me over and over again. Thanks, Instagram. You're great. But some of the casting choices, like I'm glad we
Sponsor
ended
us.
up with Alan Rickman, because like there were interesting people who were being considered to play the Sheriff of Nottingham, like Patrick Stewart was Sam Neill, Richard E. Grant,
who then Patrick Stewart, I believe, is right the one that comes in at the end of.
He plays Sean Connery's
Men in Tights.
King Richard at the end of Men in Tights.
Okay, cool. Just making sure that I had that down.
It's all connected. It's all this beautiful thing. Because again, like this is a story. You know, it's like, you know how many times we've seen Batman's origin story? Like, just okay, his parents died. Like, we see it so many times on screen. Like, we know this. We know Superman's origin story. Like, Robin Hood is an older story, certainly, but it is one that has been told so many fucking times.
Folktale.
Yeah.
Like, and the reason Cary Elwes didn't do this movie, apparently, he saw the plot of this one. He's like, this is contrived, and it is contrived. It is a nonsense film ultimately.
Yeah.
You know, and the witch stuff and because the witch stuff also. I'm sorry, I have to go back to witch stuff. So like, early on, I have to because early on,
I love the witch stuff.
Early on, Mortiana, in the first scene we meet her, right? Or in the first or second scene we meet her, she reveals that she's seen a vision of both her and the Sheriff of Nottingham's deaths. She knows who kills them. She says, what's the phrase?
The Painted Man.
So they really like using painted. That was one of the 13 references
Oh,
to
definitely.
Morgan
She does it
Freeman
more than once.
looks different than other people in this.
We may not have counted it. She did it so many times.
It's a lot. But I think it was 13 or 14 if we add that one in there. Either way.
She calls him that to his face, too.
She does. The Painted Man!
And man, he's like, God damn it.
It's just like...
I can't even kill people without them just pointing to me and saying I'm black. Jesus Christ.
It's rude. That's rude.
Yeah, and she didn't realize he was black until like she backed up away from him. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So her vision...
That was interesting.
Her vision wasn't clear exactly. She knew it was a painted man for whatever reason. She knew that. She
had to stab him to really understand who he was.
I do love... Azim puts up with so much shit in this movie. Mm-hmm. He does. That after he finally kills her, after she suddenly springs back to life to try and kill Costner, that he says, we're good now.
Yeah.
I no longer owe you anything. I've saved your life.
Which I thought he had said way earlier in the movie. Right. Like, I thought he was just out here. He just wanted to get away from home.
There were like... First and foremost, there were like 600 different times he could have just like capped one dude and been like,
all right,
my obligation's good.
Yeah.
I'm off.
Later, Sadiq.
I'm back off to wherever it is I'm from that I've never actually told anyone. I'm out. Mwah.
Again,
kiss my Moorish ass.
Film written by two British guys.
Right.
Like, I'm just pointing out, like, I've looked at pictures of these guys. Neither of them are black.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them are going to be equipped to tell you where on the map this guy is actually from. He is just the Moor.
I'm actually kind of pumped that they skipped it.
Yeah.
That they weren't going to try and like give him backstory. Like, no. Let them figure it out.
They made a good joke out of the fact that Morgan Freeman, for various reasons, wasn't coming to help Costner when Costner needed him. Like, he's too busy praying to Mecca, for example, to come and help him when he's being...
You're whining like a mule.
It just has rude comments for him after.
Yeah. Morgan Freeman, Alan Rickman, and I forget that guy's name that plays the friar. Without them, this movie is an absolute disaster. We never watch it. Nobody ever watches it.
Given your knowledge of Robin Hood, because it is this ubiquitous story that exists in the world, it's just pervasive. Like, was there anything about this story that you were surprised or confused by specifically, given what you knew about Robin Hood as a story?
I mean, the whole again, the witch part was new. The basic plot of him being in the forest and stealing, that's all like standard fare. But everything else, like the British part of it, I was like, okay, this is a gritty retelling, like you would have in a comic book or something like that. So I took it like that more. Like, this is a Robin Hood variant.
Yeah.
More than an official retelling. This is somebody else's interpretation of the core parts of the story.
the 90s took a lot of liberties with like long in the tooth source material. Baz Luhrmann, Romeo and Juliet. It's like they did some wild decisions on that, and it was just like
I think the decisions on this one, they never really figured out if this was going to be Shakespeare or Chaucer or folktale, or they just like were throwing everything. There was a lot of biblical references.
Yeah.
There was a ton of like, we're just gonna mix it all up in a bowl.
Yeah.
And throw a witch in that motherfucker.
Yeah, and the when the priest showed up, I did like their discussions about religion, even though they weren't in depth, but just them pointing out like kind of believe in the same God. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that always has like a real world parallel when they put those against each other. But yeah, it was just an interesting mishmash of things. I didn't even think about the fact that the comedic aspect of the movie wasn't present for more than half.
It was a deadly serious movie.
It was very gritty and
some one-liners here and there, some little bounce-offs, and him, for whatever reason, smacking Maid Marian on the ass, which I laughed both times at. It catches you off guard. I think I've seen this movie 600 times. Each time he's like, pop! And I'm like, what? Why? Yeah. Why was she? Why?
It weirded me out that there was like almost a sexual assault at the end.
Yeah,
in front of his mom.
Like it's
and she during the sexual assault, the witch rolls in and is like, here, take this pillow and put it under.
Yeah.
And Maid Marian, who's being sexually assaulted, looks at her like, what the fuck? Like, what, a pillow?
Yeah.
This is not feminist.
Yeah.
That is not feminist.
No.
It is kind of wonderful because, like, the actress who plays Maid Marian in this originally was going to be Robin Wright, who had to bow out because she was pregnant.
This was, well, it was going to be...
We were going to get Carrie Ellis and Robin Wright together.
This was going to be
we
the
so
Princess
close.
Bride 2, basically.
Essentially. We were going to bring the
but
stars
it's a
of that
Robin
movie.
Hood tale.
Yeah.
But so instead, it's Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonia, who I knew for one role and one role only, and that was Tony Montana's sister Gina in Scarface.
Oh wow, yeah.
And so you want to fuck me, Tony? Like that is how I see her in this, and I prefer her in Scarface. To be clear, she's just a better performance.
Who doesn't prefer Scarface over this movie?
I think
please
does.
hit us up online if you are like, Robin Hood better than Scarface. I need to see the math. I'm ready. I'm ready for the math to be. I'm ready for this to be the sacred math.
I am willing to
do. You gotta do the math.
I am willing to do a second episode on this movie if there is a single rapper or producer out there who prefers Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, to Scarface.
We'll give you 30 minutes to make
30 minutes to make your fucking case.
We will come to you. Cabbages in Space makes the case.
And then we'll spend the next 30 minutes just completely shitting on your raps. Otherwise,
damn.
I'm going to leave it to Gary. I'm just going to laugh.
Bring him out.
Time. I can't wait.
Bring him out.
Bring him out.
Ready for it. Before we let you go.
There's so much more to talk about.
There's tons to talk about this movie, but I think we have to get down to the kind of distilled question. There's always very core questions that we ask ourselves at these ones. And you know what the question is?
I know what the question is.
Why don't you fucking ask the question then?
You want me to ask the question?
Go
Who's this movie for?
Who
is this movie for? Who did they make it for?
Goodness, that's a good.
It's
that
not
is a
for
good
kids.
question.
Even though they marketed it, there's toys.
There's a witch slashing her wrist. It's not for kids.
It's a blood egg.
Kevin Costner's like core audience. It's not for them.
I might need to.
Or I don't know. Yeah, I could see like the action film audience might have been like who they were aiming this toward. But it is interesting that you mentioned like he could have done any movie at this time.
Yeah.
So maybe like some of the messages like he wanted specifically to get out there. So maybe it was like, this is for like I can do whatever I want. So I'm going to give you this, half gritty, half comedy gem.
The best acting he does in the whole film is when he first re-meets Maid Marian, but she sends out her,
face.
Oh yeah.
And he goes, the years have been kind. That gets me every time. It's this long,
They've
pregnant
not been
pause.
kind.
The Keers have been kind. It's so good.
Straight from Sussex.
Jeez. She should be in the movie more.
She does not appear
Her
again.
assistant. She's not in it enough because she's
second
actually
assistant.
pretty funny.
I was surprised to see Kevin Costner's butt.
It's not his butt.
It's not his butt.
It's not his? That was a
Look it up.
double?
Doubles.
It's not his butt.
It's a stunt double's butt.
Oh,
They were worried because they filmed this during the colder months in England.
okay.
And they were afraid that he might get hypothermia.
Did they get a discounted rate to film in the woods in winter, or?
I think they were just they had a pretty tight schedule. Like even they went over budget. But
Yeah,
they had a
because every
pretty
day
tight schedule.
it's about to rain.
It's
the
about to
entire
rain
time.
in England all the time.
So
And
you gotta
it
hurry
does
up.
not rain in this movie, so they filmed.
Hurry up,
whatever
little
they
girl!
could.
Ask him why God painted him. Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! We're on a budget.
I think your assessment of who this film is for is probably the most
probably down.
accurate one, because even though they found ways to market it to children with these toys, which were actually just repurposed Star Wars toys, they
Actually
slapped
were.
new paint shit on. Like they had a play set of like the forest, and that's the Ewoks play set. They just redid
They
it.
just painted over it.
They just repainted over it, and made it
Like a landlord trying to flip an apartment very quickly. They just put a fresh coat of white paint right over those
they had the
those
stuff there.
outlets
Yeah.
and said, "You plug it in at your own risk."
But I think you pointed out everything. Like Costner was this juggernaut at this
Huge.
stage, and they thought, at the time, it seemed right that nothing could beat Costner.
That's right.
Of course, when Kevin Costner and Kevin Reynolds reteamed just a few years later, they were proven very wrong.
Yeah.
What was after this?
Waterworld.
Really? Oh.
Even longer.
Waterworld.
They looked at the flaws of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and said, "What we really need to do is get more Kevin Costner and make it longer."
And add Dennis Hopper.
Well, that was a good move.
Which why not?
That actually was a pretty good
Dennis
move.
Hopper's my favorite villain of the
great.
'90s. I will say, with respect to Rickman.
Him throwing Smeat out to the crowd is the only thing I remember from Waterworld. That's all I remember.
Would you recommend this movie to people?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
What would
would.
you? How would you sell it to them?
Robin Hood in Earth 2031.
That was fun, Jeff, wasn't it?
Yeah, I had a really good time. We smiled, we laughed. It was great.
Yes, and Small Bro, excellent guest. It's
But
nice
we
to have
still ain't got nothing to eat.
that. Fuck's sake.
We've been sitting here the whole. I'm so hungry. We're in the land of cheese. Ooh.
I'm really glad that we went and we talked about a big movie again. You know, we did this on our episode for The Mask, and while that was a very strange blockbuster, like this now feels like a more conventional blockbuster. Yes, there's some very strange choices, but I feel like it was good to kind of really take something that is really truly iconically 90s and talk about it after all these very small, weird fucking movies we keep doing. It's nice just to do something big that lots of people saw. I found it really interesting that Small Bro had not seen it before, because it's one of those ones that when we first were going to do this, I couldn't remember if I had seen it or if I just watched that music video like 50 times. So it took a few moments when Friar Tuck gets hit in the head by the tree branch and falls off the wagon. Like, I remembered that. Like, okay, clearly I have seen this movie, and I probably watched it on HBO or Cinemax or something like that. But like, and I had a lot of fun talking about it. Did you feel like you had much fun talking about it as well?
Pretty good.
Can you put down the pretzels for just like a minute?
They're really good.
Just to
Good pretzels.
finish this podcast.
You provided us pretzels. What can we eat that the forest cannot provide?
I think this is the last time we're going to do Cabbages in Space. I think this is it. You're disciplined. You're too happy here.
It's the Cabbages Podcast Network.